Hello. This brief video is intended to provide you with a little background as to what our journal Planning Perspectives is about, what it aims to do, and to give you some guidelines as to how to make the process of publication in it as easy for you as for us. To introduce myself, I'm John Gold, and my co-editor, Margaret Gold, otherwise known as Maggie, will introduce some things about the journal.
Yes, we've entitled this presentation 7 Rules to Getting Published in Planning Perspectives. But at the outset, I'd just like to introduce you to the journal itself and say something about when it was founded and what it does and what its aims are. So the journal was founded in 1986. So it's a pretty well-established journal. And an important point to remember is that it's affiliated to the International Planning History Society. Now, this means that members of the International Planning History Society receive copies of Planning Perspectives, either electronically or as hard copy, as part of their membership. So it does mean that you have a specialist audience who are, if you like, key readers of material that is published in the journal. In addition, we take our international remit very seriously. So we aim to publish articles from around the world in as many different planning contexts as possible. And we also like to have an international set of authors as well. So coming from certainly all the continents and as many countries as possible. Now, recently we expanded the journal, so now we have 6 issues a year with 6 or 7 substantive papers per issue. You can see that this actually represents quite a serious number of papers per annum in the journal. We publish 2 types of article. The first is 10,000 words, so this is a substantive piece of research. The other type of article is shorter, 4,000 words, and this appears in what we call the IPHS section. Maybe PhD students and others can publish shorter pieces that perhaps represent the beginning of their research, the early stages, perhaps they're wanting to discuss some key ideas or key concepts. And so that's ideal for the IPHS section. In terms of what we aim to publish, then we have a very clear idea of what it is our journal is about. So we express this as papers that are explicitly concerned with the historical study of the individuals, institutions, documents, processes, practices, and narratives connected with urban and regional planning. So you can see here that we take a number of different perspectives on planning, but that key theme of planning is really important, and you might be surprised to know that quite a few submissions we get to the journal actually don't mention planning at all. So it's really important to realise that that is our key aim. And not only are we interested in planning, but that planning has to be in a historical context. So, we are interested in the kind of historical dimension the theme of the paper has. I'll now pass you over to John, who will talk about the whole process of submitting and getting your work accepted by the editors.
Thank you, Maggie. Let me just give you what we call 7 rules, 7 guidelines, 7 ways to make your life easier. First one is do your homework. Planning Perspectives, as Maggie has pointed out, may have planning in the title, but look at its website or its recent content. That will give you a really good guide as to what it's about. And you'll find, if you do, you'll find the following. It's a planning history journal. And therefore, if you're not doing planning history, if you're not specifically doing planning history, then I'm afraid we're not going to be publishing your work. So even though it's called Planning Perspectives, the perspective is historical. Next rule about plan length. We do have an all-in word limit of 10,000 words for an article. You have to realize that we have an annual page allowance from our publisher, and all the 10,000 word articles, and most people do write to the upper end of that limit. get added together. Now, if you submit a seriously overlength article, let's say 17,500 words, and not just 17,500 words, also with, let's say, 30 illustrations, which absolutely eat up pages, you're going to find that at best, we're going to ask you for a thorough rewrite. So if you can, it makes a lot of sense to try and stick to 10,000 words in the first place. Next one, aims. We've already told you what the journal's aim is, but has your article got clear aims? Could you actually state in a sentence what it's about? Now, I know that sounds simple, but it's amazing how many people don't do that. It's amazing how many articles seem to just go on, and you think, what actually is the focus of this? And we also find, and this is probably true 99 times out of 100, that papers which haven't got properly formulated aims tend to be rather vague. So please, if you can, specify clear aims. The fourth rule, provenance. One rule of scholarship, isn't it, that you have sources and that you quote sources. Those sources indicate scholarship that's gone before. So, does your proposed article clearly identify the key sources in your area? Does it show that you understand where ideas come from? Not everybody does that, and referees certainly notice, because one of the reasons we may have selected them in the first place is that they've written those key sources. So, provenance, fancy word for origins. Make sure you recognize where your scholarship is situated, what the conceptual background is. Methodology. Historical journals tend to be a little more lax than other journals on questions of methodology, because there is a sort of taken for granted thing about what historians do. They go to archives, they look at some historical newspapers or whatever. There is rarely anything substantial said about the value or drawbacks of the underlying methodology. And on planning perspectives, we're rather keen to hear about that. So if you can, comment on your methodology, comment on it in the broader sense, comment on what the limitations might be, because it helps us to understand the data you're offering. And I assure you again, absence of that sort of discussion is noticed by referees. Sixth point about illustrations. I mentioned how illustrations eat up pages. They do. We try to be accommodating. Other journals may specify no more than 8 illustrations, no more than 10. We try to be accommodating because we understand that at times the visual is important. But as I've said before, they do eat up our page amounts. They're okay if they actually are doing something. But frequently, they're not mentioned in the text, or scarcely mentioned in the text, and left to speak for themselves, maybe with a caption. Or they're poorly reproduced, that the resolution is a poor one. We say 300 dpi as a limit. Sometimes they come in at 28. If we allow people to use illustrations at that level, that poor level of resolution, they will look like nothing in the journal. So please do try to keep your illustrations at a decent level of resolution. Our rule with illustrations is you use them, make them an integral part of your paper, make them worth looking at, or lose them. And the last one, don't be lazy. When we receive papers which are clearly in the wrong format for our journal, you immediately have questions that appear in your mind. We get papers frequently in that are in Harvard textual referencing form, or they're using numbers section, or they're using endnotes, none of which we do. If we see that, well, there's an assumption we'll immediately make, and the assumption is that somebody else has already rejected it. Do you want to be sending your paper to a journal which immediately thinks that? If you take the time and trouble to match our specifications, that suspicion won't arise. So if you are in a situation, we've all been there, where a journal rejects our paper, don't just send it to planning perspectives on the basis of, if they look at it and think it's okay, then maybe they'll publish it and I'll pick up the conventions and other small things later. No, do it at the start and then all will be well. And that is the essence of what we would want to say. We do look forward to receiving your articles. We look forward to having you participate in this rather fine venture, the subdiscipline known as planning history. Thank you very much.